What's up, people? My name is Ankit Dwal. Welcome to Mountford Studio Show. Do you know how to run a design business successfully? No? I can teach you. Stay tuned because what's coming next can change your entire life.
Hello everyone. Today we are having Simon on our show. He is the founder and CEO of brand agency called Musubi. Hope I'm spelling this and pronouncing it right. Established in Melbourne, Australia and Tokyo. Hope I am saying this correct in Japanese. Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. Uh, hello Simon, how are you?
Good, very good.
Thanks for accepting my
No,
offer first of all, and then it's a pleasure to that you will be sharing your views with us and our audience. And pleasure.
I'm very humbled to be for you to ask me. I thank you very much for the time and providing the platform to have this conversation.
Yeah, we are on the process of building a platform where all the design community from the different places are coming together and share basically their experiences, how they are uh, going and what they are doing and how they have achieved so much in their life. So this is all about our podcast right now. So Simon, it would be great if you can introduce yourself and I can also get to know you better.
Great. So yes, as you said, I'm one of the co-founders of Musubi brand agency. We use Japanese design principles to develop brands, organizational culture, products, and social and digital environments that are far more interconnected, a lot deeper. We don't approach brand and design as a veneer, as a thin veil placed across a business. We need to dig really deep down into the organization, into the people, into the history, into what makes it tick, what makes it unique, what was the spark that made that organization come into being in the first place, reignite that spark, or to make that initial impetus for the brand to be polished and sharpened. So sometimes we don't even have to come up with a new logo for the client. That's not sometimes. So we are very distinct against other brand agencies that will chase a client to redo their logo, come up with a new color palette and a new look and feel, just so that way they can say, look, everybody, how great are we because we came up with this new logo. That's very self-serving, and that's a very Western approach. And it's important for us to make sure that we are in service to the client, and a bit like a Japanese swordsmith, where the person that the sword is made for, it's not about the person that made the sword, it's about the person that uses it. Its function, its esteem, its at no point is the ego of the sword maker placed into the sword. And the same with our brand work. We don't put our ego into it. It's important for us to unearth and create something unique for the client. And that's only one half of the equation. The other half is then the customers and those people that are interacting with the client's brand. We need to understand them, and we need to understand how the brand will live in the lives of the customers, not only at point of purchase, but beyond purchase. And that means that with that lens, we can identify new opportunities for the brand to have a deeper engagement, to find a competitive advantage, to position away the competitors, and that's commonly known as a human-centric point of view. But often agencies will focus on being human-centric at the expense of everything else. So at the expense of the business. So it could be really costly for the business, but we need to understand how the business operates, what's the finances of the business, what can they do, what can't they do, what is their success measures financially, and the that from that perspective, plus the customer's perspective, and from what we're trying to achieve with the brand, where we then have a much stronger view of where with the weaknesses of the brand, what we need to resolve, what's the strategy for the brand, what are the tactics that we can use to satisfy that strategy. So that's a very long answer to, so what is Musubi? And that's largely because we aren't we don't come in and try and impose something with the client. We will work side by side with them. So it is different, and we enjoy it because it's far more ethical, far more satisfying when we're working alongside clients together to create something that is going to have a stronger meaning in the world.
Okay, that's totally great, and especially the example that you are given of the Japanese sword. I think it's like on the another level because I haven't heard anyone else saying this. Because it's not more of a person for whom it is built. It's for the person who uses it. So this is very nice, deep, and having a strong hold on what your culture and what you're trying to achieve, starting from the people to the companies and what initial they are aiming for, and how you approach clients. Like when you said that you need to know everything, so how it is like I'm a newbie. Let's suppose I'm a client. Okay, I have came to you regarding a problem, that this is the problem in my company that I'm facing, and I need any brand identity, or I need to look different from others. So how it is you will be helping us?
Firstly, we try and reframe the problem. Often it could be a client saying we need a new website, and or we think that the logo is outdated, or we find that the staff performance is pretty low. So whatever that problem is usually there's a systematic issue involved. As an example, if you're at an airport and people are complaining that it's taking a while for the baggage to come off the carousel, a typical approach would be to address the baggage handlers. They need to work faster, and what are some things that we need to improve with their systems and processes. But when we pull back and look at the entire system, we'll discover that it's not the baggage handlers that are the problem, and that's the pain for the client. The actual problem is at the check-in, that we need to inform the customers to check in certain types of bags, certain dimensions, and all that kind of stuff. So that way it makes the entire system far more effective. So whatever the original problem that the client comes to us with might not be the actual problem that we need to solve. So we need to pull back and interrogate the entire system. So it could be a client that is we did a project for Australia's largest water utility called Sydney Water, 2,500 employees, and the initial outreach was from a corporate communications department, and they said that, look, we're having some real challenges with what we're trying to say in the community, and we're also having some challenges with trying to recruit new staff. And then we looked at we spent some time with the CEO, and we asked whether is there anything that's not on the table? Can we, if you're going to be talking to us, can we interrogate everything? And what are some of the key commercial challenges that you're going to be facing over the next 5 to 10 years? And that one question made the CEO say, well, Simon, of our 2,500 employees, 50% of them will leave within a 5-year time frame, because they have been with us for 40 years and they're at the retiring age. And we can't recruit new staff because the younger generation will come in, they stay 6 months and leave. So that's a big systematic problem. And a new logo and some new paint to the building isn't going to change that issue. So they needed to redefine who they were. They needed to work out what their culture is. They couldn't. There's things that they were unwilling or incapable of doing because of regulations. So how do we communicate ahead of the marketplace to let them know that you're not going to be coming into a funky, groovy designed office space, but you're going to be coming into an environment where you're going to make a big impact on the world. You're going to be shaping a new city. So we redefined who they were in the lives of the organization. And then we went out to the community and we asked them, what does Sydney Water mean to the community? And to the community, it was a sense of ownership. You're not a utility that has been sold off to take as much money from us as possible. You're part of the public. You're my water. And so there was this sense of ownership from the community and a sense of ownership from within the organization. And then we just put those two powerful sides of the equation together. And we spent 3 years working with that client to make that new narrative realized throughout different parts of the organization. It then also opened up some amazing things for the organization to show just how amazing they are, such as when a blue collar, and there was a division between the blue collar workers, or the people who are out there in the trenches, and those people in the head office wearing white collars. It was an us and them, but we said we took all of these amazing ideas from those people who were digging trenches and shared it back to the head office. And the head office were like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Look at these amazing ideas around innovation and the challenges that they've had to face with a purchasing decision from head office with a type of van that the truck driver can't see, or the van driver can't see behind them through the mirror. So they've had to come up with some other innovative idea. And so they became stories that they could share vertically from the blue collar workers up into the organization, and they became those ideas allowed them to celebrate innovation and ideas, so you could share it. And then there was these people in the vans they were given money in envelopes, so around $5,000 to give when they pulled into the petrol station. Whoever was, and then somebody from Sydney pulled up behind them, they would take some money out and give it to the driver behind them to say thank you for being a Sydney Water customer. It's a random act of kindness out of the blue, and it is small and it's subtle. It wasn't a big investment for the organisation, but it has a ripple effect within the community. So we didn't have to go in and come up with a really expensive solution to deliver very powerful outcomes. We were able to work with the strengths of the organisation and work with the talent of the people. Is that
Yeah, but
So
3 years.
so we pull back and we need to look at the entire
Mhm.
system.
Yeah, 3 years is a, I don't know whether it is a long time or a very short time, but
It's a long time.
uh, okay, it's a long time. Okay,
Mm,
and uh, I think time is not important here. Achieving what the main goal is, that is more important,
mm.
don't you think?
Saving water.
No, saving the organizations, what their culture and what they were trying to achieve. Like they came to
Yes.
you and what they were missing, you find out that problem and then given the proper solution, like the driver example that you are giving right now. uh, Normally what branding agency and what I have heard from the internet as well as my fellow friends, uh, they need a new logo, they need a new brand identity, a visual identity which will be more stronger. But the
Mm.
problem that you have just told me and how you resolve that is amazing. Like, this is totally new to me, and currently I'm thinking right now what you guys are doing.
Mm. So the 3 years, you're right, it is a long time, but it's important for us to be, whatever we create, we have to be working alongside the client after it has been created. So, um, so if we look at time based on the point that we are engaged, we gather a huge amount of information. We from the client, their history, their commercial objectives, um, what is great about their culture, what is terrible about the culture or toxic, what do they need to fix, what they cannot fix. We gather all of this information and we look at that against their competitors as much as we can. And we also get information from the customers. That can take 6 months.
Mhm.
And then and we don't like to rush it. When we're working with clients, they might come up with these are my problems that they think of off the top of their head. But now they're in problem solving mode. They then think, oh, hang on a minute. The other problem is the work desks. We've got an entire floor of staff working like in a row at these desks, and that they're all generic. That's a problem because staff can't put their running shoes or their bike helmet or other things. The staff lifestyle has moved ahead. That's a problem. Can we fix that and put that into the program? Yeah, sure. Because we have to. So that takes 6 months, and then there's a process of brand definition, defining it in terms of uh, how that the brand definition piece helps drive the creative, and the definition piece we spend a lot of time. So as an example, Nike, we didn't work with Nike, but they have their brand definition is to celebrate great athleticism. We don't hear that in the marketplace. It's just a thing that has defined their brand and how they communicate out to the big wide world. So a poster of an athlete is celebrated with great athleticism. It also can work across all the different sectors, whether it is track and field or tennis or golf or table tennis or whatever the new sport is. It helps communicate a consistent image. So the brand definition piece after the research takes some time, and that could take 6 months. So we're already a year in and we haven't created anything yet. And then sometimes the definition piece can be a little bit shorter. It depends on the size of the organization. But if it's about a year, then then the creation starts, and we have a time frame on these are the things that we need to communicate in the marketplace to generate attention or to create some conversation or to improve the internal culture. So there's an internal and external campaign. And that will go for a year, and we need to measure that. So we're in the second year, and all the things that we do have mapped out for the year. We have to measure for the third year. And that, so then when we get to we're analyzing the data that this activity was really successful, or this activity wasn't successful. What did we learn from that, and how do we at that same period next year do something different or improve it, as well as competitive data. We did this in this marketplace, the competitors did something else. Did they seem to be far more successful than us based on social media data and all that kind of stuff? So we need to analyze the execution with what we have created. Most brand agencies don't get involved in analyzing the work that they have created, but it's important for us because they're trusting us to create something amazing for the client. So we must be there to ensure, safeguard what they're trying to achieve is achieved.
Okay, and like it's the way you are approaching is very good because earlier with whom I have dealt, first they were asking me like how much time it will take. So I told them this like it's a custom based things. Whatever we will be building, and whatever the strategies that we will be having, it will take time. So I can't say how much time it will take. Well, you might be facing the same things like when client is approaching to you, they must have asked the same questions. So how you justify things like this in this scenario, basically
In terms of how much does something cost?
cost and the time it will take.
The more complex the project is, the bigger the client, in terms of number of employees, the longer it's going to take, because we spend a lot of time gathering a lot of information from within the organization. If we are rewiring the culture, and there are people that have a outdated view of management and how they can rise up within the organization, we need to identify them. So they could be pretty toxic to whatever we deliver later on down the track. So we need to spend a lot of time making sure we get a sense of the psychological profile of some of the people within the organization. Also, we will dream team other people around the client. So if we need to analyze the culture of an organization, we'll bring in specialists to help us do that. So in terms of the time, we always say that it's about 3 years to get the best out of us. We might do a salami tactic, which is we'll take on this little bit of work first, such as some research or culture analysis, or to review all of their visual communications. But it is always with the intent that will move on to a bigger piece. And we try to make that clear that even though we're doing this small bit of work, it is because of something much bigger. And then we also are making sure that the types of people we work with are focused on ethics. They're trying to do something great in the world. They're trying to answer a problem, such as to reduce plastic, or to have greater diversity within, to eliminate racism, to be a beacon of hope, to that kind of stuff. So it could be a bank that we deal with, which is traditionally very conservative, but they might see that what they do with the money that is in their care has to be done ethically. So we need to be careful with the types of people we work with. if we're going to be spending 3 years with them.
Correct. And that's trust and the long-term business relationship that you're building. So
Mm.
that is totally justified. And
Mm.
like Musubi, when we talked, it's a very good name and has a very deep meaning. So how you guys came up with that? So I asked the same question, and we started a conversation after that only. Yeah. So
Mm.
what was the
It's about
journey? Mhm.
well, everything that we've described already about having a relationship between us and the client, between the client and the customer, between the client and their organization. That's all tying things together. And if we are if we're pulling back and looking at the entire system, and they may start off with a problem here, but the actual problem is further back or somewhere else within the organization, we are then tying those threads together, and Musubi means to tie. It is also a very humble meaning. It's not about being arrogant. To tie something together is a very simple idea that will have long effect. The name Musubi is used in kimonos. It's the big knot that you see at the back of kimonos. So it's not something that you see at the front.
Mhm.
It is at the back to hold it all together.
Okay.
So hence the name.
Yeah. And how, like, you told me so many things right now. And how was the journey? Like, how you came into this industry and from where you have started? I know that's a long time, but still, I would like to hear this.
Wow, that's you've got one great question after the other. Well, so I've always been interested in design and how things connect. I'd also get frustrated with how something was designed. I remember as a kid looking at a handrail, and it was this big metal tube, and it was there as a way so people could hold on to as they traverse up the stairs. And then I'm looking at this big, gorgeous building, and I'm going, okay, here's this really beautiful building and an ugly handrail. Why didn't they think of it at the beginning? Why wasn't it all designed? I'm a 5-year-old kid and I'm already thinking about how this one little thing that I'm touching impacts the thing that I'm looking at and I'm about to walk into.
So you were 5 years right now when you were thinking so many things. 5 years.
It's my mother is an artist.
Okay.
There's a bit of work there.
Yeah, I can see.
And so from a very early age, I was trained to see the world differently, and but that question of why is it not done properly makes you curious about who were the decision makers, what was the driving forces for them, and that these are questions to keep pushing you to understand the world of business, to understand the world of design, to understand the world of consumers, to understand how people move up to and in and around space, how people live with design, the manufacturing process, stuff. So always interrogating, how on earth did somebody come up with this ridiculous idea? Why does it exist? And then you find answers around the world. So in Greece, you'll have houses that don't have front door or a back door, but the way how the house is orientated, and they'll have a pergola or an area where vines will grow over it, which provides shade. And then the thickness of the walls, and the house is cool in summer, and then it's warm in winter. And you know that they've gone through a period of experimentation to find the best way to create a house as cheaply and as effectively as possible, and without technology. So you find answers all around the world to big problems, and then that's the same thing with if you're always asking about all of these different issues, then you can weave a whole series of answers together.
So
You come up with a new solution.
okay, so you did your graduation in the field of design, or you have chosen something else and then came back to
Both
design? How is
management and design.
management and design? Okay, and after your degree, or getting your degree, you directly started your startup, or you took some
Yeah, no.
time?
I wanted to see what it was like in the real world and learn about what I wanted to. Each agency I worked with and each company I worked with, I was there to learn, and I would even test some of the people I would work with, because I was always curious about the promise that an organization gives before you start. And then I'm going, yeah, okay, that is all nice words and stuff, but what do you really like? And then you test them, and you might say something that is in a meeting that might be controversial, and then you get to learn what the culture is like. Who were the key players? Who are the ones that are trying to wield more power? Who are the ones that are actually really good at what they do, but they don't talk up and they just get on with their work? And you go, wow, that's really cool. I'll gravitate towards that person because I can learn from that person. I can't learn a lot more from somebody who's arrogant and has an ego and is focused on their own career. They're not concerned about everybody else, because a brand business is about people. It's a time-based business. So I would learn about their systems and how they did things, and how they engaged other collaborators. I wanted to learn about the financial operation of a business, and what's ethical and what's unethical, and what's the responsibility that the business has to the people that they're hiring. So then I got to a point where I went, yeah, I'm pretty clear on this industry that has nurtured narcissistic psychopaths at the expense of the client. This industry has gained a lot from the backs of designers that were paid minimum wage and did great work. And then if that particular agency lost a big client, they would get rid of all their employees overnight. And it's like, what? How's that responsible? But in Japan, there's businesses that will see fair weather conditions where economic conditions are really good, and stormy conditions where economic conditions are bad, and then hold on to their organization through the bad conditions. And because it's a responsible thing to do, that the employees were part of the success of the business when it was fair weather, good conditions. So they should not be penalized for when things are not that economically favorable. And you go, brilliant, it worked over there, it's not working here. How do I create something that can means that we are far more ethically focused and deliver great work? And then those people that you look after end up looking after you later on down the track.
Yeah.
It
So
just makes
this
sense.
is, yeah, perfectly, because the same scenario we have been facing in India as well. Like designers not are not paid well as at as they should be. I have seen multiple friends who are 3D artists, riggers,
Mm,
and VFX artists, but when it comes to the salary, they are not given so much. And
mm,
if in case any bad thing happens, like you just I mentioned the example of the Japanese, where the
mm,
economic growth is very good as well as the economic conditions are very bad, and
mm,
then but they don't take a decision which will impact the company or it's the organizations. They don't get layoff
mm,
directly. So I think
mm.
this message needs to be conveyed everywhere, and I'm glad that you have seen this. And then uh, this is how I think Musubi was born, I guess.
Yes, with a passion to um, do it properly. As an example, we've got a pair of shoes.
Mhm.
Um, so these are Musubi shoes.
Oh, they are nice.
But yeah, they're really, really cool, super comfy. I'm still wearing the prototypes, and it has little embossing here on
Okay.
Musubi, on the shoe. But the what is our approach to clients was the same approach to something as simple as a pair of shoes. We needed to find um, suppliers and manufacturers that were ethical in their approach, and um, we made sure that there was um, a living wage given to them. Um, a country um, like Bangladesh or India or Pakistan or China, Taiwan, Vietnam, they will have relatively low um, uh, costs for manufacturing, but it's not fair. Um, so we made sure that all the materials are ethically sourced, that the um, employees got a living wage through the manufacturing process. And it was a very hard thing to do. There's thousands upon thousands of manufacturers out there that um, are built specifically to provide lowest cost,
Mhm.
push the price down of the employees and profit maximize on it for the Western market. And but so we have we're very proud to have a pair of shoes that we know will last, that has been made by the hands of um, people that are being paid properly.
Yeah, that's very nice. And the material is like leather or what?
Yes,
It's leather.
yes,
Yeah.
yep. So it's not very supple. It's a type of leather that will um, take a while to mold to your foot because it's from older
Okay.
cows. So they've lived a life, and
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So, like, you're more influenced, or I say you are combining the culture of the Australian as well as the Japanese. So, how does your client, especially the Australian clients, see this when you tell them that we are following Japanese culture and it's a foreign, culture, and how you manage to convey your message and what you're doing to them?
Your questions are amazing.
Thank you. So I was just curious when I read about
Yeah.
you and we were having a conversation. The first very thing I discovered was the name Musubi, and your logo
Mm,
is very subtle at the same time. It was having a very small
mm,
red dot, and it impacted me a lot. It was like I have to talk to this guy Simon and get to know what he is doing and how he is, collaborating everything.
mm. Um, that is a big question. How does the Australian culture and the Japanese? Well, it's that type of question is really Intelligent. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it's anything worth doing has to have a bit of a challenge. Most of the Australian decision makers are very or let me put it this way: the 90% of the population is above the northern hemisphere. Australia has 27 million 27 million people. It's really not a lot. And
as compared
some
to
of the key
India.
decision,
Yeah.
yeah, in America and Europe and Japan, 27 million people in Australia. That's how many people go through Tokyo Central Station in a year. And it's, so 27 million people and we have 2.5 kilometers of space on average, based on the size of Australia. So we've got open spaces. We have our competitive forces are not as intense as Europe or America or other countries where there's a lot of greater population and which can support a lot of businesses, and all those businesses are fighting for relevance. So those businesses in the northern hemisphere are driven by CEOs and leaders that want to find the next edge. In Australia, they're a lot less focused on the edge. So the challenge is to change the conversation. That's the first challenge. The second conversation is then the second challenge is to change the conversation around the future of Australia. So COVID, as bad as it is, has forced a lot of Australian businesses to think differently. Their competitive force is with their employees. As we are experiencing right here and now, is that we are having a conversation 10,000 kilometers away from each other. And we could easily, both of us, be working on a client together. And and that's the same with big businesses. As there's in Melbourne, Australia, there's in the city where there's a client of ours that is paying $6 million a year in rent. And when they get to the end of this year, they're going to cancel the lease. $6 million a year in rent was occupied by thousands of employees. Only 35 employees are going into the office. Those 35 employees will remain going into the office. The rest of their employees will work from home. Their employee pool won't have to be in Australia anymore. It could be from anywhere around the world. So the challenge now for these leaders is, how do we attract the right types of people? Well, it comes down to a great brand. How do we keep them engaged while they're working remotely? It comes down to making sure that the brand is defined in human terms. How do we increase, or how do we get performance out of people that are working from all around the world? And that's through being able to communicate the vision of the organization. And they're things that are very, very alien to leaders that are in old world thinking, in scientific management thinking, which is to impose a job description and a set of tasks, and here's the amount of money you're going to get paid to do those tasks. That is old industrial revolution thinking, and we're living in a world where we are engaging people's ideas, people's beliefs, people's potential. So the brand has to be shaped around that, and Australian decision makers are going to lag behind because they're full of old world thinkers, because they've had it so nice, so safe. We've never had a war. we've been in wars, but Australia land has never, we've never had conflict within the borders. I mean, we have conflict between certain types of politics, but we are, and then we've got a generation where they've never experienced economic hardship, where but you have cultures like the Philippines and India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and America and Canada, where they've had each and every single generation can see economic hardship, can see it on the street. You walk through, you can go to parts of San Francisco and LA or New York, and you see homeless people. You can walk through Manila, which so these are places I've been to, and you can see a big, gorgeous building and a slum right next to it, and we don't get to see that. So that awareness of the how sharp the world can be isn't as it's not stinging these decision makers. So we have to change the conversation in terms of what the future is going to be like over the next 5 years. It's so how, and so the Japanese approach is how do you wire all of these things together? And the Japanese, we'll turn to Shinto or Wabi Sabi, which is old and new. And so how do you take the past of the organization in a new world? How do you take knowledge from people that have been working with an organization and how to relinquish that knowledge to new employees? We have a control mindset within Western businesses. This is our knowledge, you can't ever have it. Or if we give you some knowledge, it's only because of the task that you're employed to do. You have to jettison that and go, this is who we are. When we are working with a client and we're bringing people in, we don't wait until the very end. It could be a product designer. We don't wait until a table or a bookcase or the way how or a package design project. We don't wait for that product designer at the end and say, here's the brief, here's the budget, go off and do it. They're talking to the client from the very beginning. And we're exposing that designer to the client and to the world that client is in, because that means they can come up with bigger and better ideas. That's the Japanese way. And I'll give you an example with Panasonic, where in Konosuke, who was the founder of Panasonic, he came from very humble beginnings. His family were rice farmers that lost a lot of money, and then he and his brother went into making bicycle lights, that lamps that would sit on the front of the bicycle, and they were faced with a culture that said, we don't need a bicycle lamp. Come with it. See in the streets here, see how there's lights running down the streets. You don't need a bicycle lamp when you've already got lights down the street. The idea of putting a light on a bicycle now is that makes sense. But it was new back then. And he said, okay, how about I give you some lamps, and if they sell, great. And if they don't, I'll come back and collect them. And he sold out. And from there, he built a business where he wanted to share as much of that knowledge so they got into making telephones and TVs and radios and washing machines and bicycles and a whole range of different equipment within Japan. And so they would each and every single month they'll be sharing, this is what's happening over in this part of the business, and this is what's happening in another part of the business. And those people within the organization are sharing information this way, not just up within silos to their manager and the manager and the manager. It was, and Konosuke turned his business upside down. His employees were at the top and he was at the bottom. His role at the bottom was just to help navigate. And so somebody who was in making a microphone for the telephone, there was a conversation that they were having where, well, what if I'm having an argument with my wife and I'm yelling into this phone? And so how can the microphone withstand that screaming between me and my wife? And then from that, that's just in the microphone part in the electronics. But that conversation was like, oh, hang on a minute. What about the guys that are making the casing for the microphone? We have to inform them. So that piece of information was shared to the product design department. And they said, well, if people are yelling, they're going to slam the phone down. We don't want the phone to break. It's not just a matter of making a phone that you can perform a particular function on. It has to, that knowledge between one and the other and being able to slam. One little bit of knowledge sharing was a competitive advantage, and that they were able to produce the best landline telephones for decades, to the point where the military would only ever choose, especially Australian military, they would only ever choose Panasonic. So knowledge sharing, we see it in Japan. We see its powerful benefit, and we have Western Australian decision makers that are so fixated on controlling that will be their competitive disadvantage. That'll be the biggest weakness moving into the next 5 years. If you're not willing to share information with the people who are going to be part of the organization's success, then you're going to find yourself in the smoky annals of history.
Okay, and the kind of examples that you're giving, I don't know what to say right now. Yeah, but I'm having multiple questions with me, as you have given the example of COVID, and the people are very in the power of control, and like
so there's a few things that I've in this interview that I've touched on. One is being able to reframe the problem. Two is to work out how that problem is going to affect the entire organization and the people and the brand and the customers. And then there's the actual products that people engage with. And so Musubi is made up of people who focus on brand strategy and design. That's usually me. And then we have someone who's focused on cinema photography, who's Luke Tipping, one of our partners. And then we have finances, Kevin Ung, who's Malaysian Chinese, and he and I have known each other for a while, studying a Chinese martial art, and he's in charge of finances. And then we'll bring in a product designer and brand anthropologists or anthropologists. We'll bring in fashion designers for around specific clients, not for us, because we're very detailed on the shoes and our socks and t-shirts and stuff that we have. But for our clients, we'll bring in product designers, lighting designers, motion graphic designers. All of these different types of people will draw in, because they are able to, when we create the tapestry for the brand, all of these parts have a say on what the brand is trying to communicate, what it's trying to be, what's the reputation the brand has to express. And each channel, each part of it could be seen as a crack if it isn't done properly. If it is a blunt approach to it. So package design, if it's just approached based on, here's a box that has some sides for graphics, and then it gets put onto the shelf, and then that's it. That misses so many opportunities, because the customer gets frustrated in opening up the box, and then they've got a plastic bag that they have to contend with and open that up, and it's that moment of frustration is an opportunity for us to make the brand speak something, and that ability to define the voice and the story of the brand and have it expressed through a touch point for the customer. That's what really drives us. But they're all the things that's that package design isn't just about eliciting a certain emotional reaction that is ownable to the brand. What if we are solving another issue where it's the arthritis? It could be that the ability to open packaging with one hand, that could be so much easier for those people that have one hand, or they've got a disability, or they've got a visual impairment, or there's this we've got an aging population in Australia and parts of the world. What are brands doing to address that challenge? Nothing. They're still looking at old world ways of producing something because it satisfies their manufacturing process. We should be satisfying the customer. That is the entire point of brand, is to find ways to satisfy the customer and for the brand to live with that customer. It could be something as small as a pen. Oh, the other thing, sorry, when I was 5 and I was frustrated with this handrail and with a beautiful building, I was also had a Japanese neighbor, and I would play with their 5-year-old daughter for years. I'd jump over the fence, and one day I jumped over and the house was empty. And then a year later, there was a knock on the door, and it was the family that had come back to Australia to apologise to this, by then 80-year-old boy, for leaving so suddenly. And I was like, I couldn't. You've flown from Japan to Australia simply to apologise to this little boy, 8-year-old boy, and that's because the Japanese don't really see kids as subservient. They're just little people, and they'll talk to them like adults, and they treated me like I was part of the family. But they gave me a plastic, cheap pencil case, and I was frustrated with the pencil cases that I had. The ruler would stick out. It was a vinyl bag with a zip on top, and the ruler would stick out, and there was pencils in it, and the eraser and rubber would get smudged with all the pencil marks and stuff in it. But this Japanese, really, really cheap pencil case had a ruler that you slide out, and there was a section that would pivot out that the eraser would sit in, and then there was a section for your pencils. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm living in the dark ages with this vinyl bag, but the Japanese have worked it out. So it doesn't have to be, design doesn't have to be expensive. It can be really, really cheap, but it has to be really, really considered.
See, same I was saying that the example that you're giving, and I'm glad that we meet.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's like two CEOs are meeting together and then having a conversation. I'm just here to listen to you, and that's it.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying this conversation a lot. And hope I'm not taking your time and you're not busy today.
Yeah, I made sure I was free for this call. I'll also let you in on a little secret. I'm half Indian. My mother's Indian.
Okay.
My father's English. So I try to. So India has a very soft place in our heart. I grew up with stories of Ganesh mainly, and as well as Buddha and the Mahabharata and places in India, and it was always I've never been, and I'd love to go. Aji and Aja went. We call them Nana and Nani because they don't like Aji and Aja. They went a few years ago, came back, and it was they loved it. It was they love Australia, but they also love the rich history of the Indian culture. We tap into that as well with with our clients, where they we tend to use Indian culture as a way of making a point. Especially if there is some racial undertones that we're not happy with, and we go, okay, well, if you're not happy with Arabic, say, we'll then get rid of, stop using 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is an Indian construct. Indian mathematicians came up with the ability to go from letters to numbers. Then or it could be through hospitals or health or knowledge sharing, or through cooking and food, vegetarian dishes. Certain parts of southern India are famous for certain types of dishes, or it could be how they rose up and defeated the British and turned to their own national resources to stave off as British stopped ships coming in with food and supplies, and how to be able to communicate and create a national voice across such a large land against a powerful a country that was so much more powerful at a military level. So that's we tend to turn to India a lot to punch holes in people's arguments, and it usually shuts them up pretty quickly when they go, oh yeah, they've done it a lot. They did it before there was free communication across the globe like we have now.
Yeah. That time was totally different, and the kings needs to be united, because India was divided into multiple many kingdoms, and the message was to be conveyed that this is not the right thing, and we need to unite ourselves. And the communication that you're talking right now, the message needs to be conveyed to every single people, and then unite them and fight against what they were doing. So yeah, right now I can't say much on this topic because we can lead this to somewhere else. So it's better to leave it here and then.
And so it's
Yeah.
important that when we are dealing with organizations that they might have different, so HR and marketing and property, if it's a business that has, say, at the retail network, and social media and finances, they are all stuck in their little echo chambers and silos, and with their own kingdoms. And it's important for us to unify them, and so often that's a big challenge. It's another reason why we work with clients for 3 years, is because we have to work with people to take them along the journey, for them to understand the importance of where they are to where they can be. And that term is going from good to great. Yes, you're good in these different parts of the business, and that's been good. You've been around for, say, 20 or 30 years, or however long the business has been around, and you're still here. Good, but you're not great. And then when you get to great, what does that mean? Because you're on a new platform there, and now you can get to see how everybody is working, and so it's important for us to analyze during the third and sometimes fourth or fifth year, if there is an employee value proposition program that goes out to recruit employees, we need to see the value to an organization that they get from an employee is around 2.5 years. If an employee is, especially in the Western society, if they leave after 6 months, that's pretty common now. An employee will start, work for 6 months, and then leave. Go, I don't like you guys. You're toxic. You're arrogant, or you don't give me the things that I need. So that's a problem with the messaging. If we've put a messaging out that's attracted a certain type of person, and they feel like they have been lied to, deceived, they're not going to hang around
Correct.
because, yeah.
I
So,
think that is where the communication strategy and the brand strategy comes in, because communication strategy is what deals within the organization as well as with the clients. Then a proper message should be conveyed to everyone, so that if a newbie comes in and he recognizes that the company is having a toxic environment, but still there are certain cases like what is the need of a newbie. Is he joining for the financial crisis, or what kind of problems he might be having? He has to say stay in the organization. But if a branding agency comes in and improves the quality of the organization,
mm,
I think he would love to stay for a longer
mm,
period of time instead of leaving for the working 6 months and then leave.
mm,
So I think, yeah, communication strategy comes
mm,
in this particular case.
mm.
Do you agree on this?
Yes, we create welcome. So it's important. Uh, when somebody's coming in to an organization and they think that they honestly believe that business uh, is a socially and emotionally intelligent and socially progressive organization, and then they find that they get shown to a desk. Here's your computer. This is the person that you're going to be working alongside and reporting to, and that's it. Yeah. So it's a when an employee comes into an organization, they with a certain belief, that's an opportunity um, to open up the world of the business. Most businesses will take an employee and say, here's your desk, here's your phone, and this is the person that you're reporting to, and then leave them alone, and leaving it up to the manager uh, it, to almost circumvent what the business is about. That line manager could turn around and go, well, let me tell you how things are done around here. And um, but and that person might be incongruous to the values of the organization, because that person wants to they have their own agenda. So we create a welcome pack, a box, and it's a non-negotiable when we have work with clients. And in that box, it has a book about the brand. This is what we stand for as an organization. These are the things that we celebrate. These are the things that we do not tolerate. These are the things that we um, we want to share with you. We are an organization that has achieved this, and we've achieved that, and your department relates to this department and that department and this department, and you should, and these are the people in those departments that you can talk to. And then here's a map of this is where the business is, and these are where the post office and the dry cleaners and the chemist and all the things that you don't even think about that are close to you. And then here are some temples, and this is the diversity profile of our organization. We have Muslims, we have Hindus, we have atheists, we have Christians, we have Buddhists, all of that kind of stuff. So and then here's some information about those religions. So you're armed with, if you see somebody wearing a turban and you know they're a Sikh, then you should have some awareness of what their culture is like. And it could help stimulate a conversation. And so even in the world of COVID, we still demand that our clients take a welcome pack box, because when they're onboarding somebody remotely, it could be somebody in another country, that box can get sent over by surprise and say, here's the team of people that you have working around you around the world, and this is what is great about them, and how you a little bit about our organizational cultural background. That type of information is uh, um, is critical in understanding the context of where you are within the organization. It helps frame the communication types that you have. Instead of in Australia, there's Harmony Day, where it's one day to celebrate the diversity of cultures that are in Australia, and but every other day, it's people that will, if you and I were working in an office, and I learned that you were Indian, and I was culturally insensitive, I'd go, yeah, I love Indian. My favorite Indian place, restaurant down the road, they do a really mean curry. And it's like, geez, you can't define me as an Indian person based on some food. We have a rich and powerful, long history and culture. It has these positives and negatives and color, and there's so much to it. But I'm also me as a person. So don't just look at me based on what you can determine from my name and the color of my skin. I like tennis, and I like action movies, or drinking green tea. So those things should be where the conversation heads to, not based on your job title and your nationality, and that gets conveyed in the welcome box.
I mean, like, first of all, congrats to your answers that you're giving me. I think it's been 3 years I'm in this design industry, 3+ years, and before that we were into IT businesses. But I have transformed from the IT company to branding agency. So it was a lot, and the team members needs to understand what I was thinking, and the message should be conveyed to them clearly, because at the end they will be working within the organization. So it was very important for me to understand, and the way you are explaining things, and I will definitely take information from you, and we will have a different session with them. So this is what Simon said, and these are the things that you need to learn. Like, let me give you an example. One of my sir, he is in the UK. He works as a project manager. I don't know the designation, but he's having 25 years of experience with the IBM, a different organization, but currently he's working with the IBM. He gave me case studies from the Harvard Business Reviews. Okay, so I gone through it. I think that's very interesting, and my people needs to learn this thing also. So I have just gone through the internet, googled multiple things regarding whatever the stuff I found. I have passed on to them, excluding the material that I got from the sir, because he told me that not to convey this or to proceed somewhere else because it's confidential. So I have not provided all the materials that the sir gave me, but yeah, whatever things that I have learned, I have conveyed to them. So like you were saying, you need to understand what the culture is and what kind of message a person wants to give. So within the organization, leaders needs to understand this thing, that you have to treat your employees like your family, so that they can stay longer with you. Even in the same, like, you must have read that Oyo laid off Oyo. There were other companies who were laying off many people. So when I read this news, I was just thinking, like, what mindset a newbie or a new joinee would be having. I have just joined the organization, and this COVID thing is happening, and I don't know when I will get hired again. So this is a very tough situation, and a very, you know, the mindset I was having at that time was very shocking. And I was, talking to my employees, and then saying, no matter what happens, we'll be staying together.
Mm,
If you will be searching for the job, I'll be also searching for the job. But you will be staying with me only, so there will be no
mm,
layoff. But talking about the coming back to the Oyo, I don't know what they were thinking and what they were doing.
mm.
Yeah. So
Yes, the providing some psychological safety to the people that are part of your team is important. It's a hard thing for uh, Western CEOs in particular to provide when the vast majority of Western CEOs are um, have um, they're focused on measures of performance and success um, in the absence of the rest of the employees and how they feel and think. Uh, a CEO will get paid millions of dollars and they'll have a nice big house and they'll have a beautiful car, and they're the board that they report to are driven by governance, which is predominantly financial and operational and legal. Where within that construct does it include looking after your employees and how they think and feel? And if somebody in HR says, "Oh, we really should," it ends up being a an outside program that comes in and is bolted on, and you have there's a certain amount of money that the company pays a psychology firm for your if you want to talk to somebody. Um, that's pretty shit. So, but it's we've seen it done properly before. So there's precedence, which mean, and it has worked, such as Panasonic. They don't. When in 1929, when there was a Great Depression, Konosuke made it clear to his employees that I'm not going to let go of anyone, and because you were there for me during the good times, so it's why would I let go of you when it's during the bad times? You looked after me. It's my job to look after you. And
correct.
yeah, so they reduced production. He got people to work from one part of an organization to another part. But the benefit was that when the economic conditions turned and Panasonic's competitors went, "Oh, we want to take some of the Panasonic employees because they're already skilled," and the employees go, "Why would I go to you? This Panasonic's looked after me. I'm going to look after them. They looked after me during this terrible period, so I'll return the favor and look after them." And then, so suddenly, this organization has they're in the starting blocks, ready to go, bang, and off. They're already running down the track as where all the competitors have to hire, have to train, have to get them productive, and that could take years. And Panasonic they've looked after their employees and they're already performing. And after the 1920, after the Great Depression, that showed it was one of the they ended up becoming a $9 billion in the 80s, a $9 billion business where innovation was going from one part of the organization to the other. It was crazy. So a short window of pain delivered a long-term gain. Look after the people.
Correct, correct. And this is also like I'm also talking to my friends, to my juniors also, and within their organization, they are having like facing one problem, that is people are getting laid off. Okay, and companies are taking advantage of them. Like if I'm a person having 5 years experience working in a very esteemed organization, I have been laid off, and
Mm,
eventually I have to get back home, and because I needs to be on a safer side. I need to be on a safer side. I have applied to multiple organizations, and the current package that I'm getting, I'm not getting half of that. And what do you think on this? Like, uh, there might be some people who are taking advantages of this and organization. So, what are your views on this? It's a very serious problem and needs to
Yeah,
be heard.
yeah. So where exploitation is, um, wherever an unethical organization can take advantage of people, they will.
Mhm.
And so that's where countries introduce regulations. Australia has some of the strictest regulations, which is good at safeguards, but we also, the country itself has like a social security ways to ensure that not only are there regulations to prevent or reduce exploitation and laws to penalise exploitation, but there's also a financial safeguard that the country provides to help weed out exploitation. So it's a bigger challenge, but as a brand agency, we don't work with um, we're pretty quick to say no. We spend a lot of time up front trying to get to know the organization, and it doesn't matter how much money they want to throw at us if they are exploiting their employees. We're out. Um, and um, with and as an entire industry, um, if every single brand agency said no to unethical employers and companies, then there are, especially those ones, then that industry cuts off their voice. The power of a brand agency is to give that business a voice in the marketplace, and it will dull it to a point where it's probably a whisper, and then those ethical businesses will sing far more clearly and loudly in the marketplace. Warren Buffett, he a few decades, or about a decade ago, he started to pull his money out of non-renewable businesses and put his money into green business, and that so then those businesses, because they provide greater returns on investment, but they green businesses deliver a ripple effect of value into the community and into the environment, and so over time, as more and more investors started to put their money into other green businesses and build up a market for green businesses, those that weren't green focused struggled, and so it takes time. So, but it's important that there's some kind of ethical framework from an employee's perspective. They also have to do the same thing. So we, at one part of the equation, are using our ethical power to send a message. Employees should also be able to say, no, I'm not working for you. We've seen examples of that throughout the past, where people will go on strike and not work for a company that has a poor safety record, or that the employer has reduced payment, or they're not paying what the industry recognizes, and all that kind of stuff. So if employees should realize that they are the legs of the table on which the business is sitting on, and if they just stood up and said no,
Mhm.
used their collective voice and power, then the employer is left to say, well, okay, we'll do it properly, uh, and that's what we hope to see. There are certain countries where it's hard to do, but we try to make sure that even down to our shoes, we found it really hard to find manufacturers that were ethical. But the more and more, if um, if more and more fashion brands start to become ethical, then that will change the manufacturers, and the manufacturers will change the way how they hire employees and how they pay them. Okay, we'll give them a living wage because that's a condition in being selected by the marketplace. Market forces isn't the best, always the best answer, but it is part of the answer.
Okay. And there are like this tough situation. There are companies. I'm specifically talking about the design agencies and the branding agencies who are struggling a lot. Okay, you are from the management side and you have been in this organization from a long time. So, what would you suggest to them? How they manage their finances, make their sales, and how do they cope up so that they don't burn themselves?
Uh, you have to have a flatter management approach. Um, depending on what the brand agency wants to offer in the marketplace, will depend on how they approach it. But a lot of the ones that are faced with COVID restrictions are now cutting their. They're not going. Some of them have decided to cut their lease or terminate their lease with the office, and we were on a video call last week with a guy that has 30 employees. He's a PR. He owns a PR agency, and they had a office that had 3 floors, really cool looking office space, and they went, "We don't need it." So we're flattening our structure. We're getting rid of some of our costs. So
Okay, so
very early
what
on in
we
Musubi's history, we had an office with a boardroom and all that kind of stuff. And we hardly used the boardroom. We're going to have a smaller office.
okay.
And we were nervous. We thought maybe clients will walk in and think, "Oh, you guys are too small." But it was the opposite, because we were able to still offer world-class solutions. Didn't have to be we don't have to be charging a client's huge budgets just to cover our overheads. We can charge our clients what is fair and value shared between the client and us. And then because we work with clients for 3 years, it's a longer term piece. There are going to be periods where we will reduce our fee during downturn, but it's agreed from the beginning that when the economic conditions improve, then our fee will get to what it was before, or we'll have a discussion where we negotiate somewhere in between. And our clients appreciate that transparency.
Okay, okay. Mhm.
So this podcast will be shared on LinkedIn and on your website and things like that. Will it be broken up into different parts, or will it be the full hour and a half?
What we do is if it's going 1 hour longer, because we will be breaking into parts, and YouTube, LinkedIn, my social media, Facebook, Instagram, etc. I don't have Instagram of my own, so it will be shared over there, as well as in the Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, whatever the platform of podcast you can think of. There are 6 major platforms that we are on, so it will be shared over there.
I don't have Facebook.
Okay, I only have Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's enough for me right now. It's very hard to manage with everything. Yeah, specifically when it comes to posting on for my company, I'm very open that this is needs to be posted. But when it comes to me, my mom always keeps on complaining that why are you not posting your own pics, that people should recognize you and who you
Mm,
are. And say, okay, I will
mm.
post someday, but I'm still hesitant to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's um, the person behind the brand isn't critical in all of the social media communications.
Mhm.
It really comes down to the message. So yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah. Uh, so I think we should end our conversation and wrap this up because
Yep.
I have taken a lot of time of yours, and thanks for that. And definitely
Thank
we'll be
you.
having one more session after a certain interval of time so that we can get to know what we are doing and how things went after what I did and people heard. So I will be definitely giving you a positive feedback on this.
Oh, great. Yes, whatever time frame suits you, and you can dictate the day and time for the next session.
Sure.
If you can send me a link of where the podcasts are, and that way I can help share them for you as well.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you. And at the end, I would like to say arigato. Yeah,
Pardon?
arigato, arigato.
Arigato. Yes, sorry,
Actually,
there was some noise in
that's
the
totally
background. You said it very
fine.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Actually,
but I
yeah, where I'm living, it's been 33 years that my sensei is here. He follows Japanese kudo. Yeah, so I
mm,
have been practicing a lot uh, before COVID because after COVID, everything got shut down and we are still in the
mm,
process of all those things.
mm,
So, yeah, so I know a few words of the Japanese and the styles. That's
great.
right. Yeah, it was pleasure talking to you and I learned a lot of things and definitely looking forward to it again.
Great. Excellent. Domo arigato.
Arigato. Okay, bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for joining me. Let's wrap up the show, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try to resolve them as soon as I can. Do follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can continue to create content for you guys which will help you in running design business successfully.